And so I haven't mentioned this so far in the episode, but you do have autism.
Yep.
And I kind of, I've worked with clients that have autism, and there seems to be a common thread of challenges that happen despite the varying degrees of what their autism may look like for them. There seems to be a common thread, and one of those common threads are the feeling of feeling different, or being viewed as different, or being treated in a way that is different. Can you kind of walk me back to this earlier childhood experience, maybe, or even like pre-teens, teenage years, or however that looked like for you? Kind of trying to walk through life socially, through school or whatever, and being autistic. What was that like for you?
Well, I guess those difficulties. I think sometimes it's hard to learn stuff for me, but I've gotten a lot of strengths too. I feel like, I don't know, it's like I have a little block in my brain or something that maybe is a good thing. Helps me do things that I want to do.
Can you explain that block? What do you mean by block?
I don't know, it's like this thing with, I don't know, people like overthink stuff and decide not to do things because how they think about it, but then I don't know, I'm just different.
Yeah, that's really cool the way you look at that, because that is a holdup. People can get stuck in this analytical way of thinking about things so much that it keeps them from doing something. But for you, you're saying you don't think about it in that way. You just think, this is something I want to do. Let's do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Patina'd Podcast is about the earned wisdom found in pain. It's about chasing failure, catching it, and using that as an opportunity. It's about scar tissue and sinew. It's about stretch marks and dented fenders and refusing to hide them. It's about pushing our insecurities and shame to the forefront instead of behind us. Instead of seeing rust as something that compromises a structure's integrity, we choose to see it as the grit that builds character. This is the Patina'd Podcast. Okay, well, let's do this thing. All right, Zach, thank you for coming on the Patina'd Podcast. Zach Bates is a 21-year-old ultramarathon running savage. He's part of this younger crowd that is starting to get into ultramarathons and doing exceptional things in a very young ultramarathon career. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, Zach, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So this podcast is about resiliency. It's about doing hard things. So I'm interested in your story, Zach. How I first got to know you was I was watching the Western States, and because like many people, I was excited to see Courtney Dauwalter break a record that day. I was anticipating her winning. So I was watching on YouTube Western States, and they did a little camera shot towards this young man that was running, and they said, "Oh, here's Zach Bates," and they began to talk about you a little bit. I'm like, "Oh, who's that?" And probably like a lot of people that day that saw that scene, I looked on Instagram, and I began following you on Instagram, and I've been following you since. Let's start there. Let's start talking about this running journey that you've been on, and what's got you to the point you are right now with running.
Well, I ran back in middle school, and I ran in high school. I've done it for fun. I've liked competing. I was all right at it. Then after high school, I decided that I wanted to try to do a 100-mile race.
What was it that got you to want to try to do 100 miles?
Well, I've searched stuff. I've seen other people trying to do that. I decided that I want to try to give it a go. Seems cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool, but it's also like, I think people can see people do that and they think, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. But then they also think, well, that's terrifying. There's no way I want to even try to attempt it.
Yeah.
So what got you to the idea of wanting to even attempt it?
I don't know. I just got ideas in my head and I decided that I wanted to just see if I could go do it. I looked at the pace and stuff of what you need to do. It's not like a crazy fast pace, but still moving quite well to get it done. Like to get in 30 hours, it's like below an 18-minute pace. something like that.
Hmm. Was that your initial goal for your first 100, was to get it below 30 hours?
Well, most 100 milers have a 30-hour cutoff, and I was thinking I could do that. So yeah, I guess so. I had 24 hours even in my head, but I was just happy with finishing.
Yeah, my first 100, I was telling you a little bit about it before we pushed record here, but yeah, I think I had this 24-hour mark in my head too.
Yeah,
And how old were you when you had your first marathon?
I was 19.
What got you to even want to attempt that? Was it just right out of high school? You're like, okay, I want to run a marathon.
Yeah,
What was the thing?
I talked about running a marathon in high school, and then after high school, I decided I wanted to do a 100 mile. But I went and did the marathon first.
And how was that experience? How was it running the marathon?
That was pretty good. I did kind of buckle after mile 21 and slowed down quite a bit. We finished it, and we signed up for a 50-mile race.
So went from 26.2 to a 50-mile race.
Yeah,
How soon after the 26.2 did you do the 50 mile?
I think it was like a month or something. Yeah, a month.
So in the time that it takes some people after running their first marathon, it takes maybe 2 weeks. You're like, okay, let's start looking at the next thing. So after the marathon, how many days did it take until you decided you wanted to run a 50 after the marathon?
Yeah, I was planning on it even before the marathon.
So that's a smart idea, is kind of keeping carrots dangled out in front of you so you don't get, too
Yeah.
lazy or like, that sort of thing. So that's smart. What if you had, what if your marathon had gone poorly?
Mm.
Are you still doing the 50 miles, or would you go back to trying to attempt the marathon?
Well, I think I would still go for the 50 miles. I did struggle during the marathon actually towards the last 5 miles. The 50
Mm-hmm.
miles, I just decided I was going to go slower. And we ended up doing the do Wackadoo 50 mile, which was really quite hot. We didn't realize how hot it was going to be. So it was like over 100 degrees. So what I would do is I would just do, I ran the first beginning quite a good pace, like a 10-minute pace. And when it was cool outside, then it got to like over 100 degrees. And I decided to just walk. I think there was just six people doing that race. So
Oh,
it's not
wow.
that much. It was quite a small race. So I was just walking at a pretty good pace. I would get to aid stations, I'll sit down, I would put cold water on myself. I'd get up, walk to the next aid station, sit down, put cold water on myself. I was taking it slow. I was like, after did the first half, I was taking it quite slow. And then I didn't really think I was going to win or anything. I was thinking I was like in the back. But what happened is people just dropped out of the race because like people got
Mm-hmm.
really hot and stuff. Well, I think since I was taking it slow, I was tired, but I was doing quite well with how slow I was taking it, which allowed me to finish. That race took me 12 hours. It was pretty hilly
Man.
too.
So you got 50 miles in 12 hours on a 100-degree day on a hilly course.
Yeah, it wasn't like as crazy hilly as a lot of other places, but yeah, just kind of hilly.
S- Still, that's like it's a good way to kind of like humble me, and the like naturally in my mind I'm comparing my my numbers to you, and it's not looking good for me. So yeah, that's great, man. In this kind of earlier journey of your long distance running experience, when did you find out like I can really push myself to a limit that normal people aren't willing to do it? Like I can do really hard things. I have this high resiliency to go and chase this dream of continuing to do high endurance feats.
Um, have an exact time. I just decided to go for it, I guess. I don't know.
And so you're saying maybe it was like a kind of like a steady increase over a period of time where you began to just think, you had this belief in yourself that you can do it, or was it the whole time you just always knew that you can do it?
I guess I somewhat was thinking I could do it, yeah. In my head, I was thinking I could do it. Now I think of it, I was ready to go
Okay.
give it a shot.
So that's unique. That's unique. I think for most people, is they have to start real slow. They have to start just it. Maybe they're going to run a 5K. Then maybe they'll run several 5Ks and get used to that. Then maybe they'll run several 10Ks and then slowly progress over a period of time. I remember when I first started running, I looked it up and I kept finding, the experts online saying you should have at least 10 years running experience before you run an ultra, and you should have at least 3 years running experience before you attempt a marathon. And I didn't really take that advice very well. And it sounds like you haven't either.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've just kind of jumped straight into it. So that's pretty amazing. Is that normal for you? Is it like you just jump right into things?
Yeah, I guess the past couple of years I've been trying to just jump right into things. Jumped into my 100-mile race. And then I got into two different races. I got into Western States and UTMB. Just two crazy races. I finished Western States, got under 24 hours. That was great. UTMB, which is this another 100-mile race. It's got 33,000 elevation gain. And I happened to I got sick the day before. But I still decided to go in.
Was it the travel? What was it? The travel and like going there is what got you
Yeah,
sick?
and
How'd you get sick?
we had like a pretty big vacation now. We wandered a lot, and I got sick before it, but I decided to go and do the race anyway. It's-
Well, let's pause
Okay.
before you talk about UTMV because I want to talk about Western States
Okay.
first. And like I said, and that's how you first jumped on my radar anyway. So Western States isn't a 6-person ultra like your first ultra was,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not 6 people out there; it's massive. And Western States is out in my backyard essentially. So Western States is not just a hey, let's sign up and get into this thing. Like this is, in my understanding, the oldest ultra marathon. Am I wrong? I
It
think it's
is
the old, yeah.
the
And
oldest
so
100-mile race, at least. Yeah.
oldest 100, and so it has this prestige about it. It has this aura about it where all the top runners in the world want to check that one off their bucket list. That's the one.
Yeah.
And so, in order to get in, you have to go through this lottery. You have to go through this whole process of making sure you have previous runs that qualify you for such an experience and all this stuff. So, how did you even get into Western States?
Okay, so I did. I actually did two different qualifying races. I only did one, but I did the Canyons 100K endurance runs, and that race I actually got sick before. Um, so after we went to this restaurant, I think I got food poisoning or something. I was throwing up all day, but then before the next day, I got like an IV, and decided to go do the race anyway, I guess. And I just decided I was gonna take it slow. So I woke up the next morning without really eating any food the day before and just took it nice and slow. And then I ate food at aid stations and stuff. I think at one point I was 30 minutes within the cutoff of the halfway
Wow.
point. But at that,
So, you're right on the edge.
yeah, but then at that point I just sped up. I was feeling better, so after trying to eat food at aid stations and stuff.
So I want to clarify what you just said real quick. So
Yeah.
let me bring this into
Yeah.
context for people who are not runners or ultra runners, because at least the people in my circle that are going to watch this, most of them are not ultra runners or runners. So what you did was you got food poisoning the day before a 100-mile race.
100K kilometer.
100. Oh, 100K. Okay.
Okay.
So 62
Yeah.
miles, I think, right? 62. So 62 mile. so much so that you needed an IV in order to replenish your fluids after throwing up.
Yeah.
And then you decided to go through this race, and you didn't have nutrition in you,
Yep.
which is like the amount of calories that you burn in an experience like this. To not have nutrition in you, for me, it would be a cramp show the whole day. It would just be cramps all day.
Yeah.
And then you get to the halfway mark, which is 31 miles, I believe.
Hmm.
You get to 31 miles, and then you realize I'm right on the edge of not making time. I better speed it up.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big win just in of itself. That's huge, man. Wow. Dude, you're an animal. Okay. So you picked up the second half of the race. How much time did you pass with? Like how much leeway did you have?
I had 20 hours to do the race. The halfway point of the cutoff for the halfway point was 9 hours, so that took me 8.5, I think, or maybe 8 hours for that might have
Yeah.
been 20 minutes away. And then at the end, I got in 17.5 hours.
I'm terrible at math, but you got in with plenty of time.
Yeah,
You had 2.5 hours of wiggle room there.
yeah, because the race was 20-hour cutoff, and I did it in 17.5 hours.
Dude, that's incredible. That's great.
Thank you.
So then, what was the process? So you had to put in for entry to get in, and then you got picked. How did that happen?
Well, I put in the entry race. I had the one ticket of 41,000 tickets. Because like each year it doubles. So you have one ticket to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, 64, 128. So I just had one ticket because this is my first year trying. And so I put that in, and they draw 270 spots. I had like one
Hmm.
ticket for, and they drew ticket for 270 people, and I got drawn, which was like a 1% chance.
What the heck,
Yeah.
dude? That's crazy. So you got it like first try. You got your 1% chance to get in. That's nuts, man.
One thing that's
Well,
crazy is I didn't just get qualified for Western States, but I got also got the ticket drawn, or like they have stones. I had like a few stones or something, and they that's what they're called. They're like the tickets for UTMB, and I got drawn
mhm.
for that race too.
What a crazy year.
Yeah.
So this is within the same year, right? Like,
Hmm.
wow. So, let's talk about UTMB because that's going to lead into this other area of mental health and that I want to talk to with you as well. But I think UTMB is a great segue into that because, as you were just alluding to a moment ago, you got very sick prior to going into UTMB,
Yeah.
and so let's talk about your experience there first because it's in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, according to pictures that I've seen online. You were what on vacation with your family prior to it?
Yeah, we went on vacation for like couple weeks. Yeah,
Okay. And how many feet elevation? You said 30 something,
thirty three
30,000.
thousand um on the course of 100 miles.
Yeah, that's a lot for
Yeah.
for people that are not aware. That's a lot of elevation.
You climb up multiple mountains throughout the entire race and just running up and down mountains. And there's steeper spots that aren't as steep, but it's just steep the entire way, honestly. You just climb up and down and up and down.
I've seen the beginning of UTMB, and you get so pumped just seeing it, like
Yeah.
like looking at it on a screen. It gets me jacked up just looking at it. The amount of people. There's a lot of how many people is that UTMB? There's a lot.
They have like thousands, I think, or 10,000
Yeah, it's
total.
so many people. Holy moly. Yeah, I just did the CIM, California International Marathon, and that had 10,000 runners. And it was overwhelming to be in that big of a crowd of people.
Yeah.
Probably won't do that one again, but
Well, they had different races, so I think it was like 10,000 for multiple different races. I think UTMB, the
okay.
100 mile itself, had like a couple of thousand.
Still, that's huge for an ultra. That's huge. So tell me, so I can see on the screen how cool it is just at the scene. Like people are at the beginning of the race, people are getting jacked. They have this whole ritual thing that they do. So kind of tell me about the beginning of the race of UTMB.
So at the beginning, it was a big crowd of people. The day before, I talked to people. I met really cool vinos. I got to the starting line, and then they did a countdown. There was like a crowd of people watching and a crowd of people running. And then there was even the buildings off to the side. And then there was people like on the balconies looking out to watch all the runners. And then we ran. And then when I was running, there was like I was running with all these runners. It was big grouped. It was all grouped up. And on the side of the run, there was people on the side cheering for people. So it's just a lot of people. And it was like that for the next few miles of people just on the side cheering the runners
Hmm.
coming through the start line.
Is this the race where they do the clap thing before?
Yeah, they
Is
do
that
the
is or
clap.
am I wrong?
Mm.
Yeah. So were you just already feeling sick at that time, or were you just enjoying the experience at that time? Like, what's your mindset at the
I
beginning?
got sick before the race. So about I think the day before the race, I was having like this sore throat and stuff, and I wasn't feeling the best. And then on the race, went on and run, and I think 20 miles in or something, I was within 20 minutes of the cutoff, just 20 miles in. Eventually,
Hmm.
I just kept running. I was getting hot, and my heart rate was getting high. And I decided to stop halfway. I think I had 15 minutes of the cutoff left, but I just felt like I needed to rest. I felt done. 50 miles into the race, I felt done.
And how did that feel? Like, what was that experience like for you to have all this momentum on your side? You just finished Western
Yeah.
States. Then you got into UTMB, which is another kind of miracle in of itself, just to be able to kind of get into that now. And then you're on vacation with your family. All this kind of experience that leads to this moment, but you get sick, and now you're 50 miles into the race, and you choose to cut it. What was that like for you?
Um. Well, I didn't like it a whole lot, but I felt like I was going to just think about what to do next. And this one race that I saw when the first year went on, Cocodona. I watched the live a lot of people running it. I thought it was a pretty cool race, and I've thought about already doing that, and I decided that I wanted to. I thought all this hard training and stuff would help lead me to a bigger race like Cocodona. So that's why I decided that I wanted to do.
That is a very excellent tool that you're doing, and it seems like nobody's taught you this. Maybe you just do this naturally. Is you've set up the next goal for yourself amongst the failure.
Yeah,
You set up the goal for yourself, so you made sure that you're not going to sit and dwell in this experience. You found something else for you to focus on,
yeah,
um, and something even that you've been kind of keeping on the back burner that you're excited about, and you're like, well, I can use this experience to help infuse me into the next experience. But how long did it take you to get over the fact that you DNF'd
I think I got over after a week.
after a week?
Yeah,
Okay. So you did have some time to sit and process it and kind of be angry about it and be angry about the situation,
yeah.
and then you kind of moved on.
Hmm.
Okay. Zach, I don't know if you know this, but that's how it would be taught to you if you were working with a therapist.
Yeah,
It'd be like, okay, so spend some time, process it, feel the breadth of the loss or the failure. Just feel that. Allow your brain to process it and consume the idea of what you just did. Didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out, and then start thinking about what's next. And you did that perfectly. So
yeah,
good on you, man. Okay, so we've talked so far, and we know that you're perfectly credentialed to be on this show now, right? Like you clearly have resiliency. You clearly have been through failure by putting yourself in impossible situations
yeah,
or near impossible situations. I want to kind of take it back to the origin story a little bit of
okay,
Zach Bates, if that's okay.
yeah,
And so I haven't mentioned this so far in the episode, but you do have autism,
yep,
and I kind of, I've worked with clients that have autism, and there seems to be a common thread of challenges that happen despite the varying degrees of what their autism may look like for them. There seems to be a common thread, and one of those common threads are the feeling of feeling different, or being viewed as different, or being treated in a way that is different. Can you kind of walk me back to this earlier childhood experience, maybe, or even like preteens, teenage years, or however that looked like for you? Kind of trying to walk through life socially, through school or whatever, and being autistic. What was that like for you?
well, I guess those difficulties, I think sometimes it's hard to learn stuff for me, but I've gotten a lot of strengths too. I feel like, I don't know, it's like I have a little block in my brain or something that maybe is a good thing, helps me do things that I want to do.
Can you explain that block? What do you mean by block?
I don't know, it's like this thing where, I don't know, people like overthink stuff and decide not to do things because
Hmm.
how they think about it, but then I don't know, I'm just different.
Yeah, that's really cool the way you look at that, because that is a holdup. One fun way of saying it is analysis by paralysis. People can get stuck in this analytical way of thinking about things so much that it keeps them from doing something, because they can work themselves up, and the more they think about it, the more anxiety that it produces or something like that, and it keeps them from doing it. But for
Yeah.
you, you're saying you don't think about it in that way. You just think, this is something I want to do. Let's do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. All right. And what were some of the challenges like for you socially growing up? And even now, some of the challenges you may have from a social standpoint.
Well, I guess I've gotten nervous talking to people. I've had trouble with communication, but I'm alright. I've had friends in high school, which is fun, and I've talked and hanged out with them a little bit. When I got on the cross country team, that I feel like that was a really good thing for me. It's just like a community of runners, and it's something I like doing, and they like doing, and I had fun times with them. Yeah, I've been annoyed about things. My autism, I think, is helped me in many ways. So
Do you feel like do you feel like now, as a 21-year-old man, like you're more comfortable in social settings, or have gotten better at it, or do you still feel like it's a challenge for you?
I feel like I'm doing a lot better at it. I've talked on different podcasts and talked to people. I've enjoyed talking to people.
For another person who's watching this, who is inspired
Yeah,
by you because they also have autism, like there's a lot of people you inspire in of itself, but I imagine even more so for the person out there that has autism. What is some advice that you feel like you would want to share with them that would have been helpful for you
mm,
growing up?
that's there are really good things that you can focus on. Some people out there, they have really great skills in like different areas. It's like I seen this one autistic one that was really good at drawing. He drew like a city without even looking at it, which is cool. One really good at piano,
Hmm.
and you can really help you focus. I've been good at focusing on things. For me, I guess I don't know about for everyone. Not every autism is even the same. Everybody's got the different skills. You just gotta try to find your own skill and just roll with it.
Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about the autism aspect of things. It sounds like you're doing so many things that are healthy for you, not just physiologically, but also psychologically. I saw the other day on your Instagram, you've gotten into the cold plunge situation
Yeah, a little bit.
and this type of stuff. So, how is that going for you?
It's going pretty well. I think it's helping with recovery a little.
How often are you cold plunging?
I would like I was doing it once a day. I don't think I did it yesterday, but I think I'm gonna go in there again today. Maybe 5 minutes. Cause it's gone quite cold. So outside. Well, maybe I'll just try go.
Yeah, it's cold outside and inside the plunge.
Yeah,
There's so many different anecdotal things that people share about cold plunge, and then there's a lot of research science behind the benefits of it, especially for dopamine and that type of thing. Do you feel like it's making your mood feel happier or anything like that?
I think I do have a pretty good mood after I've gone out of the cold punch. So yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, there seems to be a ridiculous dopamine benefit behind cold plunges. So we'll see. That's something I'm trying in the near future as well.
Okay.
All right. So on the back of this UTMB failure, getting sick, DNF, did not finish. On the back of that, you had mentioned Cocodona was
Yeah.
something that you wanted to kind of jump into.
Yes.
And one of the, I know I look at Cocodona probably the same way a few years ago I used to look at people just running 100 milers and this thing of like awe, I heard Chad Wright talk about how this was something he just did it this past year, and it was his first time doing it because it was something that terrified him. And this is like, if you know anything about Chad Wright, to think that an endurance race would terrify him is doesn't seem like it could happen. But Cocodona 250 was an idea that terrified him, and he avoided it for a couple of years until this last year. And then there's all sorts of really cool stories out there about Cocodona 250. Mike McKnight's experience last year of how he won Cocodona 250
Yeah.
is like heroic, man. It's like it's baffling how he's able to come through that. So Cocodona 250, so the audience knows, what is it and where is it? Because I think those two things are very important. The location of it and how far it is.
Well, it starts in Black Canyon City, and then it goes to like these deserts and cities and stuff. It's got
And this is in Arizona, correct?
yeah. It starts in Black Canyon City. It ends in downtown Flagstaff. It's got 40,000 feet of elevation gain, and it's this race that I've decided I wanted to do now. So
Yeah. And it's during the summer, correct?
it's in May.
In May. Okay. So it gets very hot and it gets very cold, is what I know about it.
Yeah.
At nighttime, it gets ridiculously cold, and during the day, it gets really hot. So, what is it about Cocodona 250 that is attractive to you?
Well, when I first learned about Cocodona, it's always this thing that I liked watching. I liked seeing people do it. I thought it was very encouraging to see the rhinos come in. And I saw some pretty cool rhinos, and I'm watching the live feed. And I actually paced the last year, and I loved the course. I paced
Who did you pace?
I paced for Michael Corson. I think
Okay.
he did pretty good in our race. I think he got in like 88 hours, and he was like 20 something
Wow.
place. Yeah,
Yeah. How many miles did you pace him for?
I paced for 85 miles.
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah,
And so now you got the bug, huh? So now you got a feel of it since you're kind of able to sit there and witness it.
yeah, I loved it. So
What other future ambitions do you have for yourself that you're hoping to do and, you know, either in the ultra scene or anything even outside of the ultra scene?
I do have a race. I'm gonna be doing in a few weeks. It's a 24-hour race.
Any injuries going into it? You feeling like you're 100%? You feeling good going into it?
I'm pretty sore for the marathon, but I'm still gonna bring up the miles, and then I'm going to taper. So I think I have like 2 weeks.
What does the training schedule look like for you, like specifically as you're preparing for 100? What does that look like?
I just run a lot, I guess. Well, I might do some strides, but I mostly run a lot. I remember for UTMB in Western States, since they're so close together, I was kind of training for them at the same time. We would travel a lot, and I would go up mountains because I know both of them have a lot of climbing, especially UTMB. So I was really focusing on all that climbing.
And so you're just is it just time on feet for you, or are you trying to reach a certain amount of miles per training session? What and how many days a week are you running?
I would run 6 days a week, I would say, about pretty much most weeks. And
Okay.
I I start low. I might do 50 miles. Then I remember for UTMB, I was going to like 90-mile weeks. It wasn't just 90-mile weeks, but I was running up and down lots of mountains. So it was getting
Mhm.
pretty crazy. And then I would taper off. I can't go up. I go up for a few weeks and then I go down, and then I go up for a few weeks and I go back down.
And what's your taper look like?
I'll just reduce my miles 40 to 50 miles or so, or
Mhm.
maybe just a little bit the week before. I don't know how much it might do, 20 or something.
And what's your during when you're in a race, what comes up for you when you do bonk or some injury is coming up or some feeling of I can't do this or whatever the wall is for you when that hits, how do you kind of work through that?
I think about the next day session, I guess. I make sure if I'm tired and stuff, I might just need to eat, so I eat. I'd be really good. There's multiple walls, but I would get through them.
So food is typically the way you break through a wall.
Food is good. It can make you feel better
Okay.
if you're struggling. You can get behind on it. It can be hard to catch up, though. So try to just keep it in throughout the entire race and keep on eating food.
Yeah, do you feel like you got the whole food puzzle figured out yet? Like what works and what doesn't work?
For me, yeah.
That's great. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'm also not putting in as many miles as you. So, yeah, my stomach blows up, man. And food is still an enigma for me. On my last run, the last ultra, Ray Sanchez had out this Hammer Nutrition stuff, and basically it was liquid calories and liquid carbohydrates, and that was way better than the solid stuff. I mean, for my stomach anyway, it didn't taste as good as an Oreo cookie, but it was way better on my stomach than anything else that I was taking as far as solids. So
That's
I'm
great.
still trying to figure that puzzle out. Yeah, I know you're big into records and
Yeah.
numbers and even trying to eventually get to the point to where you can set said records or numbers.
Oh,
So
yes.
do you when I talked about ambitions, what kind of ambitions do you have with records?
ambitions. I've thought about different records. I've looked at Eunice Yours records. He's this crazy ultra runner. He's like has the fastest 1,000 mile. And I looked at that. I don't think I'll do that right now. I think that might be a really long way away. But I was thinking it would be cool to try to break the 1,000 mile record someday.
It'd be incredible just to do 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
But to break a record would be incredible.
I think to do 1,000 miles. It took him to do 1,000 miles. It took him 10 days and 10 hours. Yeah.
That's so much. But if we look at like people like him or the Iron Cowboy and what he did, oh my gosh, man, 101 days of doing a triathlon distance for 101 days straight.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff's incredible to me. That stuff is like, because it's more like, Cocodona 250 is like, that's crazy because it's day in and day out and you're not sleeping. And so on a similar sense, the reason why something like that, like you're mentioning 1,000 miles in 10 days, you're doing a 100-mile ultra a day. I'm not good at math, but I can figure that out. And that's incredible that the human body can do that. That's incredible. Yeah. Well, Zach, I'm a fan, man. It's such an honor for me to have you on this.
Thank you.
Maybe mention what your Instagram is and how people can connect with you.
Well, on Instagram and TikTok, it's run.farther. I've posted some videos there, so you can look at those.
So run.farther?
Yeah. Or further.
Okay, run.farther. And again, man, I'm honored to have you on here. This was a great conversation. I admire your strength. I admire your ability to push through discomfort. And I think a lot of people do as well. So appreciate you having you on, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Patina'd Podcast. There are other shows that emphasize resilience, but my intent is to normalize personal development through embracing challenge by interviewing the common man and woman, the person that you and I can relate to. If you are someone who wants to soak up the insights of normal people doing extraordinary things, please subscribe. If you know somebody who is overwhelmed by fear and complacency, please share this podcast with them. I'm your host, Kenny Hill, and I run a private practice near Sacramento, California called Recovery Hill. My website is in the description tab along with my social media links. The intro music was Two in the Back, performed by Sunday at Slim's on Blue Dot Sessions.